Hi, welcome back. Ron had a good question there, just kind of about can you still make flexible dynamic workspaces that do specific things, or I guess generic workspaces in a way, that do specific things based on the format you're writing to? And I think my initial approach would be to, again, kind of like I was talking about earlier, just use testers or test filters on the value of user attributes. So in this case, I assume you're choosing which format to write to with the user parameter. And so you can test the value of that user parameter and then route the features into different processing streams based on the value of that. So, test if the user selected or automation selected or whatever, end up selecting the user parameter value. If it selected DWG, then send that through some processing and then into a dynamic writer. I believe that would work. I don't really see any reason it wouldn't. So that would probably be my approach, is just think about testing on the value of that user attribute or user parameter. So hopefully that is clear enough. We'll probably have some extra time at the end here, so we can have a look maybe at what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and feel free to put more questions in. I'm happy to answer those as we go along, but I'm going to get going on the exercise, put the link in for that. So in this example here, we're going to create a dynamic workspace using generate workspace. And then we're going to look at combining generic and dynamic workflows. So in this example, we're continuing on that previous workspace where we translate a geodatabase into a format of a user's choice. But the problem, as we saw last time, was that every output dataset includes all the source table attributes. So that's not very good. We end up with all these extra attributes in our data that we don't want. So we can use a dynamic approach to ensure only the attributes we want are actually present on the written data. Okay, yeah. Ashim is asking for a demo of feature type fan out. So yeah, I can do that. I'll do that after this exercise. Happy to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and work through the steps here. I'll demonstrate them and then you can give it a try yourself. So we are going to go to File, Generate Workspace, use the Generate Workspace tool. If you haven't used this before, it basically just combines an add reader and add writer dialog into one dialog. And then the only other kind of special thing it does is you can set this up to just automatically use dynamic schemas. It's pretty much the same as adding your reader and choosing feature type merge and then adding a writer and choosing dynamic as the attribute definition mode. So we'll be reading that same geodatabase. Looks like it's properly remembered the path there, so I'll keep that. And then for format, we'll do generic. And data set, again, you don't have to specify this. We didn't specify it last time, but let's go ahead and put this one in anyway, since that's what we'll choose if we use a user parameter instead. And then for the writer parameters, we should specify the default output format. It looks like, again, it remembered from the last exercise. If we had not done that, this would be unspecified and it would be forced to pick a default. So let's go ahead and pick shapefile as a default. And then the big important difference here really of what we're doing is we will choose dynamic schema for the workflow option here. So I'll click OK to generate this workspace with a dynamic reader and writer. And as we saw earlier, let me bring these a bit closer together. In a way, very simple, maybe more simple than you might expect looking workspace here. I've generated, so why don't I go ahead and save. That's what our starting workspace looks like. Again, feature type merge on the reader, so everything is right in there, and dynamic writer, so everything is written out regardless of what's received, and we don't know in advance what our schema is. So in this case with user parameters, we have the same stuff we had earlier, basically. We could edit these if we wanted. Like, we could basically repeat the steps from the last exercise to get rid of this one and to restrict the output format options. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to bother doing that. If you did want to repeat the steps, you could. That would be a little more realistic probably to how this workspace would be built, but we've already been over those steps, so I'm not going to show you that again. One thing we should do is we're going to actually keep the source one this time. So let's go ahead and run this. And we can select some feature types to read. Just kind of randomly pick some. And maybe let's try changing that. This time I'll write to, I don't know, let's try DWG. I don't think that'll fail. Let's give that a try. So we've written some data out. Let's go have a look at it. I'll click the Open Container Folder button. And in here, oh wait, that's the one I did earlier. Yeah, so we have this one, training DWG. It's just in this case been given the name of the folder that it was in. I didn't define a feature type fan out, so it is a single feature type here. Oh, actually, no, it looks like it did define. Oh, because we have dynamic. So yeah, I don't need to define the fan out. It automatically has separated these out. You can see though, in this case, because it's DWG, there's no schema defined here and no coordinate system either. So we've written out there to the format of our choosing, and it has preserved. I mean, we didn't see much preserved really there. Preserved the geometry. It's just the format. I guess that wasn't a great format to choose, but it has preserved whatever it's able to for that format from the generic writer. And so now what we can try doing is rerunning the workspace. But what we'll do is we'll actually point it at a different file geodatabase. Because this is set up to dynamically read, it should just read it in and write it out, even though the source data has changed and the schema has changed. So I've changed that to an addresses geodatabase. And then I should clear this because these feature types won't necessarily exist in this new data set. So I'll clear feature types to read. And maybe I'll choose a different format this time. Let's do shapefile. Or maybe mapinfo tab. Yeah, sure, we'll do tab, and then we'll run. So now I've changed the data set, the source data set, completely different. Same format, but different schema. So let's open this up and see. So it looks like we have two. This is a better example here. Feature types were preserved, two different feature types. We can have a look at the schema of the data that was written. Should be preserved. I would like to read these ones. Oh, it's detected the wrong format. Let me make sure I have the right format there. So now you can see, so this generic writer, it maintained the source attributes, geometry, and feature type names, right? So the schema has been preserved even though it wasn't defined in this workspace at all. That's the whole point basically of doing this dynamic workspace. So that is just an example here, a basic example of a dynamic workspace, where in this case we kept a fixed input, but we added or fixed format input, but flexible schema input, and we defined both a flexible format and schema output, and that was preserved when the workspace was run. So that's the basic example. Tomorrow, Ryan will take us through some more complex examples where he'll cover defining the schema in other ways. So we'll cover that tomorrow. But I was also asked to demo a feature type fan out using the format attribute. So I can go ahead and do that. So this is currently set up as a dynamic writer feature type. So this, you don't need to set up a feature type fan out for dynamic mode. It will do that automatically, basically, 'cause it's going to preserve the original feature types. However, if I had set this to automatic, for example, I would choose a geometry type. And then for the feature type name, I would choose an attribute value. In this case, FME feature type is the one I want. It isn't exposed, so it doesn't appear here, but I can just type it in because it is an unexposed attribute on the stream of data or stream of features that's connected. And so I can type that in here once Strigo wakes up. So again, what that's doing is that's using the original name of the feature type, which is stored on an unexposed FME attribute called FME feature type. And maybe once I do this, I can actually show you where that is and unexpose it, just so you can see a bit more. But here it is, FME feature type. Click OK. And I should say, actually, I think that only will show up if you have a feature type merge on by default, I believe. I don't think it shows up if you have fixed or individual feature types, I think. I could be wrong, but it's if my memory serves me correctly. So if you're not seeing that, that might be a reason. So what will happen now is it will still write out to different feature types like it did with dynamic, but I actually have, in this case, a fixed schema. But it is going to dynamically, in a way, choose the feature type. Now, what I can also do here is, if you want to see where that attribute actually lives, we can, if you type in FME, you can see here's all these different FME. I think it actually is exposed. Let me see. So that, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. It is exposed there. I wonder why it's not available for me to pick from here. Oh, it is there. I just missed it. I didn't see it. So you can also pick it here. So it actually is already exposed. And I guess maybe that was the difference. I'm misremembering a bit. When you use a feature type merge, it exposes it for you so that it's easier to find. By default, it is there for other feature types. It's just unexposed. But you can see that here. And if you want to see, you can track the value of it as well. So we have postal address is probably most of these. And then at the bottom, I think there's postcode boundaries. Yeah, so this is the other feature type, right? Because this is a feature type merge. They're all read in at once. There's, 13,500 features, but these are from two different feature types, postal address and postcode boundaries. And we can split them back out again later using the value of FME feature type. So hopefully that helps, Sashim. And Mark has a question. Is there a way to add generic workspace to the Start tab? No, we've removed it because it isn't actually used that often. And I don't believe you can't currently customize what's on here. If you're annoyed at that lack of generate workspace and you do use that a lot, let us know. You could start an idea on the community or support case even just to provide some feedback or something like that. But yeah, that is now available under File, Generate Workspace, but we did remove it from here because we just found it wasn't being used that much. And again, you can still create dynamic workspaces with individual feature types or individual readers and writers when you're adding them. But yeah, we just use the generate there. It's a bit quicker in this specific case. Yeah, so it's still unavailable under File. It's just since, I think it's 24. Is it 24.1 or 24.0? We moved it from the start page here. It used to be here as a big button. Now it's just over here in File, but it's still there. You can still access it. Okay, so that is the last exercise for today. Today's a little faster, and then Ryan's going to be busy fitting everything in tomorrow, but we don't quite have time to cover the whole next section, so we're not going to move on there. But what I will do is I'll allow these machines to continue running for the next, I guess I'll say an hour, and I'll check in and see if people are still using them. So we'll keep these running till about 12:30 p.m. Pacific in about an hour. And if the class is people are starting to leave by then, I will close them. You can always request an additional machine if you need it. So here's the link for today's class if you'd like to request that. And let me just wrap up